Okay, testing a slightly different audio setup, so hopefully this will be more audible. The last video I did was me reading out responses to the heat signature alpha, so people's feedback from playing it, which was surprisingly heartening and surprisingly nice. The last time I really dealt with feedback from just strangers out there in the world, like over the internet, was looking at the Steam forums for Gunpoint. And some of the people who have problems there are nice about it, but some of them are really not in the mood to be polite about it. And so I'm used to kind of just being, there's nothing wrong with the game, just being slapped in the face about it. But yeah, testers are a different deal and much friendlier, which is really nice. So I've been going through, I sort of compiled a list of like the biggest problems and bugs, and then went into this like post-testing phase that I kind of forgot about because it's been so long since I did a test like this. And it's the best bit of it really, which is after you have all that feedback and after you've processed it, because there's going through it and then there's compiling that list and figuring out what the most important things are. Once you have that compiled list, it takes a lot of work to produce that. But once you've got it, you can just kind of blow through it at an incredible rate because a lot of there's really no correlation between how big of a problem something is for the user and how much work it is to fix it. And if you know how big of a problem it is for the user, you know these are all really high value targets, these are big deals, these are things where when you fix it, it's going to be, you know, the question I asked in the survey was, what is the biggest thing wrong with this game? So anything I hear about is the worst thing about the game for one person. And sometimes for more than one person. And so when you go through and fix that and it takes like 8 minutes, it's amazing. It's probably the most efficient work you'll ever do in your life. It's just like completely demolishing these massive problems in quite short order. And some of them will be hard. There are a couple where I still haven't fixed it because I don't totally know how to go about it. There's one or two where someone's had a crash and I can't tell from the error log exactly what's causing it, and I haven't been able to reproduce it myself, and so that's going to be a difficult thing to find. And there's a really big one which actually kind of put me off schedule a little bit, where the game is just running out of memory. And this terrifies me. This is like my darkest fear, is there'll be a problem with the game that is not exactly an error in my code, or rather it's a problem with my code, but it's not that my code creates a logical contradiction or references something that doesn't exist or commits one of these kind of logical fallacies that are sometimes hard to find, but ultimately they are my fault. This problem is also my fault. I don't want to pretend that it isn't, but running out of memory is one of those things where the reason it's crashing is something to do with the hardware or something to do with the architecture of the engine that it's running. And ultimately it's a mistake in your code because your code should be working nicely within those limits, but I don't really know what those limits are. No one's really told me that, and I don't have a good background in that kind of stuff. And I think that's the kind of thing where if I'd done computer science at university or something, I would probably have a grounding in just roughly like, what is memory really? I don't totally know. And like, I mean, so to give you an example of why it's confusing, the game would crash with an out of memory error, and there was also another type of crash it would give about not being able to create a vertex buffer of a certain size, which I think is the same thing. I mean, not exactly the same thing, but I think they're both symptoms of the same problem. And one of the reasons it's confusing is that it will say that when you can look in Task Manager how much memory it's using, and it will use about like 400 megabytes or something, which is, you know, a lot. But you have 8 gigabytes. This machine that I'm recording this on has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I was taking a memory crash on that when it was using 400 megabytes of RAM. And what is memory then? If it's not that, is it a different type of memory? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not asking you. This is a hypothetical question, or I'm just explaining why there's a certain class of problem where, completely separate from the difficulty of the problem, it just intimidates me. I get scared about it because I don't have confidence that I'll ever be able to fix it. I mean, I kind of have a vague notion that I'll figure out a way to work this out. You know, I'll ask someone, I'll find someone who can help me. And actually I do have someone who might be able to help me with kind of technical issues like this that I'm hoping to get involved with soon. But it's the thing where I don't have any confidence. Like for game design, I have a certain amount of confidence, and for basic programming, I have a certain amount of confidence. When someone tells me, when I see the game crash, it pops up that error message, I don't think, oh god, oh no, what am I going to do? I think, all right, I'll figure that out. I'll make a note of it. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I don't know why that would happen, but I'll look into it. I've solved bugs like that 1,000 times. I mean, that's not even an exaggeration. 1,000 is, because that's a million. But if when someone says 1,000, we sum that to 2,000, then that's probably true. I probably have fixed 2,000 bugs, probably more, over the course of, it was 3 years of working on Gunpoint. It's been about 2 years since Gunpoint. I haven't really stopped working in Game Maker for any serious length of time in that period. And that's basically what you do. That's one of the reasons why games are so hard to predict how long they're going to take, is that like 50% of the work is fixing bugs, and you don't know what bugs are going to be, and you don't know how many of them they're going to be, and you don't know how long any individual one will take to fix, because if you knew what the fix was, you'd probably have already done it. So it's a giant mystery. So yeah, the fact that there was this massive problem with the game, it was so bad that I couldn't even, that people told me it was bad, and then I tried it on my own machine and found it to be really bad, even on my own machine, in a way that it wasn't just before I sent the test out, and that was baffling. And it meant I couldn't really play the game on this laptop, so I could only work on it on my desktop, and that restricted, where I can work. I can't, go to a cafe or anything. I couldn't do much on it when I was in France recently, and it also just made it feel really nasty when your game has a big problem like that. It's like it's diseased. It becomes not a nice place to spend time, because at any point it's going to cough in your face. So I wasn't really fixing that bug, so I didn't really know how to approach it, and I also wasn't getting anything else done because it was hard to ignore the elephant in the room. And I was talking to this guy who I hope will be able to help me with this kind of thing, and not really having a clear path to fixing it myself. And then I sort of realised one thing I did was I decided to try and diagnose it better. I don't know how to fix this problem, but what if I start disabling features of the game and just say, let's not use surfaces anymore. Let's make the whole galaxy, all these giant gas clouds, just not draw in any way, and things like that, and just put those in as options, and then send that out to a few of the testers who had that problem, about 16 of the people who had that specific memory problem, see if without those options it will fix it. And just before I sent that build, I realised there was something I was doing with the way music is loaded that I changed at the last minute with the test, and it basically came down to it kind of loading it all into memory ahead of time and then playing it. And I thought that meant when it needed the track, so it would kind of going to play this track next, load it all into memory, then play it, rather than streaming it from the hard drive. Again, this is one of those areas where I don't really know what's happening. And I think I might have told it to load the entire game soundtrack into memory all at once, and that might be why I was running out of memory all the time. And we also, through that test where I followed up with a bunch of people who've been having these problems, someone very cleverly diagnosed where a memory leak was happening, and it wouldn't have been the explanation for every crash, because it was only if you start a whole new galaxy. And the way I was doing that was using a GameMaker built-in game restart command, and that is something that I guess does not clear certain types of memory that you were using, and so each time you start a new galaxy it would kind of be taking up more and more memory. So that certainly wasn't helping. And so we fixed both those things now, and it doesn't happen anymore on my machine, it doesn't seem to happen anymore for the testers, and so maybe I'm still doing something bad with memory that I'll figure out later, and certainly I still need help on performance and technical things like that. But it's basically a big breakthrough, and the kind of the scary monster is gone. And so I'm working freely and more productively on the game now. And that's it's amazing what a difference that makes, because this game is kind of a huge part of my life. I quit my job, and not specific to make this, I quit my job to make games in general. But it doesn't really make that much sense to work on more than one at a time. I tried that, it's not a good way to go, because obviously it's going to take twice as long to get anything out. And getting things out is that's the release, that's when the pressure's off. Gunpoint doesn't pressure me at all now. It's just a thing that's out there and it's done, and I feel great about it, and people tell me it's great, and it's just a really positive thing in my life. But until it's done, that doesn't happen. Heat signature is a positive thing, but it's also a struggle. It's a massive, huge body of work that needs doing, and there's no schedule for it that's imposed by anyone else. It would be worse if there was. That would be stressful. But that also means I'm just wrestling with it myself, and that's my 10 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up soon. I'm wrestling with it myself, and obviously I'm not working in an office or anything. I'm just working from home, so I'm just here with this massive monster of work all the time. And that's something that I knew I was getting into that. I knew it was going to be different to being in an office environment. I knew it was going to be less kind of a little bit less, certainly less sociable and less kind of balanced. It's a place where you go mad for sure, like alone in your house with a massive difficult job or like work of, I don't know, a creative thing that you've got to make that's also incredibly technical. There's definitely the potential to go crazy doing it. And I knew that, and I knew that I would go a little bit crazy. And I have noticed I wouldn't say I've gone crazy, but it's easier to lose perspective when you're stuck on one little problem and it's actually quite a small thing, but you've got so obsessed with fixing it that you kind of can't tell that you're over fixating. And it's easy for that to affect your mood, and that's what I was going to say, which is basically that once I had this big problem that I didn't know how to solve, I didn't even have a route into solving it, and it was looming over me, it really had an effect on my mood, and it really kind of, I wasn't doing that much work on heat signature because I kind of couldn't, but I also wasn't doing anything. I mean, I was playing games and stuff, and I was trying to figure out heat signature problems, but none of those things kind of were enjoyable in the way they usually are, and it was just harder to get any pleasure out of them. And then as soon as that memory thing was fixed, and now I'm just working on things that are still difficult, things that are not making a massive difference to the way the game plays, so not necessarily the most rewarding work in the world, but I'm making progress, and I can work, I can do it. All this stuff is just things I can do, and I'm doing it. And that actually just feels great. Suddenly I'm just way happier again, and game's going great, and it made me realise how important heat signature is. Like, this project is kind of just going to be my life for a while, and when the project's not going well, my life is going to be quite unpleasant, and when it's going great, it's going to be great. And so hopefully I can just tweak the way I work and kind of seek help where I need it to make sure the project's always going great, and then everything will be great forever.